The Film Crickets are intended for mature audiences. Any guests on the Film Crickets do not necessarily share the same opinions as the Film Crickets.
Film Crickets, chirping about movies.
It's time for the Film Crickets with Jay Fortier, Chris Martineau, and Melanie Howerton. On this week's episode, Jay and Chris are joined by Simon Holland and Luther Hoy. Jay, Chris, Simon, and Luther review the 1995 American road comedy film, To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
I'm Always Right and You're Wrong song sung by her lonely breastesses herself. Let me ask you, Vida, what do you know about relationships, huh? I mean, who loves you, baby?
Does it stand the test of time? Let's find out. Your Film Crickets are on now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Film Crickets. I'm your host, Chris Martineau. This week, Jason and Melanie are off, but we are privileged to have the honor of having two of my former students at Jackson Reed High School. They are Simon Holland and Luther Hoy. Say hello, Simon. Say hello, Luther.
Hello, Simon. Hello, Luther.
Oh, you suck so much. I can't even handle it. Say hi, Luther.
Hello, everyone.
All right, excellent. Luther, you just I know we're having a little the volume issue. We're not going to cut this out. We just want to speak up a little bit, and probably microphones kind of have to come a little bit closer.
Okay.
Besides that, I think we're in good shape. All right, so just be aware of that. Sorry, a little behind the curtain stuff there. So, hey, this is the Film Crickets. Again, we are looking at movies from the 80s and up to 1999, and we're trying to figure out if these movies hold up to the test of time. Apparently, as I've been doing this, and I've been trying to keep it on the DL that I actually run this, podcast. Word has gotten out that I, do this on a semi-weekly basis. You guys really can hold it down low, I guess. But so as a request from Mr. Holland, from Simon, I'm going to do that a lot. As a request, he said, hey, we're both movie fans. Luther and I have talked about movies too, but Simon and I have just facts. We've talked about movies more. And then you're not only that you like them, but you also kind of look at them the same way I do. We kind of analyze them and see what the intents are and talk about directors and actors and all that stuff. And Luther, to a different degree, certainly in theater and whatnot. So we both understand and have an appreciation for the performing arts. And so Simon said, hey, I want to come on the podcast. I said, not while you're still here and not until you're an adult. And well, he checked those two boxes, as did Luther. So they both graduated from Jackson Reed. They have both moved on. Tell us where you're studying now, Holland. That's right.
Whichever one you are.
Tom Holland, Simon, whatever.
Yeah, like the Netherlands.
Everything but the Ben Holland. We don't want anything to do with that kid. So can you tell us where you're studying and what you're studying now?
Yes, I am at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, Middletown, Connecticut. It's in the middle.
Yep.
And I am a first year. Right now, I haven't determined my major. Wesleyan's big on the go in liberal arts, woo. But right now, I'm looking in the direction of probably some combo of anthropology and theater.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying stuff out. I think all the classes I'm taking this semester, everything's something different. So we're going to see where I end up.
Excellent. So you are definitely a student of human behavior in one way or another, either real human behavior or fake human behavior.
Exactly.
Doing
or studying. Exactly.
Well, either way. All right. Luther, talk to me. What's going on? Where are you and what are you studying?
I'm at the University of Michigan, which is like the complete opposite of Wesleyan in terms of size and everything. But I'm also in a very liberal artsy environment. So I also haven't declared my major, but I'm hoping to do something public policy related, political science. There's some great programs here. And so
I didn't know that about Michigan. They have political science stuff there. Oh, fantastic.
But the public policy school is like, I still have to apply, which feels really weird because I'm already into college.
No, that's if it has its own school, you need to apply separately. I did the same thing when I went to music school first. It was like I had to get into the college first and I had to apply to the music school second. So I'm the same boat. I'd like the folks out there that are listening that aren't aware of who I am or what I do. I'm a physics teacher. So I'd like to show how much influence I have on these young men. I'm not going to anything closely related to math or science, but that's fine.
Hey, we're on the Marty train. We did our time in AP Physics and we loved it.
Yeah. So anyway, no, I dig it, man. Look, the whole point is the point of anything that you study is to open up your mind to things that you haven't thought about before, right? And which is why I suggest everybody goes to college at least for something, even if it's community college. When I teach community college, so it's important to try to do something different and to immerse yourself in something you're not sure, and then you see what happens. You never know, right? Like I said, started in music school. ended as a nuclear engineering major. Who knows, right? You never know where the path's going to take, and you just have to be ready for that path to diverge. So anyway, so we talked about this, and the format of the show is 80 to 99. And I asked Simon, you want to be in the show? I gave him a list. And Simon, you gave me the title of what movie again?
To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
All right, so
I didn't know you had a list. I want to see this list.
Well, you weren't. I didn't. Hey, look. Blame Simon. Maybe next time. But so we were invited by Simon to watch To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. And in the typical fashion of the show, what I'd like to do before we go into kind of the nitty gritty of it and talk about it is I would like to know your history with this movie. So, do you own it? I know you don't do physical media, Gen Zs, but
see also the What We Do in the Shadow DV debacle.
Yeah, right. I like that crap. So, but I'm old. So tell me what your history is with this movie. When was the first time you saw it? How many times have you watched it? Is it on a regular shuffle for you? Do you have it on the background? What's going on with this movie for you?
So very funnily enough, the first time I watched To Wong Fu was this April on a plane. But I've had a lot of this is like the most bare bones exposure to the drag community, but I am an avid RuPaul's Drag Race watcher. There's this great show called Dragula that features a lot of horror alt artists. And so I've been very into, and as much as a under 21-year-old can be, I've tried to expose myself to the scene, do my education, because I think it's a really cool expression for queer people and for anyone, but mainly queer people. And so, and coming up, you as a gay person, I feel like I see all these references to classic queer media. Some of them are it's Dead Poet Society. It's not actually gay, but there's subtext. And then sometimes it's something like To Wong Fu that is so overtly gay. So it's something that had been on my radar for years, but I was on a plane to Los Angeles visiting my cousins, and it was on, and I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this because I've heard so much about it. And I went into it with some trepidation because you have three straight guys playing drag queens in a movie from the it's how well has it aged? How respectful? And I'd heard good things. So I went in with an open mind, and I loved it. It was this thing. It felt like such an amazing, genuine expression of queerness coming from straight guys that was respectful and heartwarming. And it really stuck with me. And I loved the way it was shot. I thought it did such a cool thing with colors, and it made the three main queens pop, and you got a feel for it. It felt kind of campy and tacky, which is at times what drag is. It is campy, it's tacky, it's slapdash, it's glamour on a $20 budget. And I felt like To Wong Fu did such a great job of encapsulating that. All three of the performances were great. And it's also a movie that I felt like isn't in the mainstream. It has, arguably, I think four high B A-list actors in Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, John Leguizamo, and Robin Williams for a bit in the beginning. And I had this moment of more people should know this movie beyond the sort of cult classic niche that it's found. That I think a lot of movies of that time period that are of this maybe queer focus or are campier or weirder have found, Rocky Horror has found this, But I'm a Cheerleader has found this. And just sort of interesting to see if you have a movie that feels so mainstream, but isn't, and has this. And also, I have so many problems with Rotten Tomatoes, but a 48% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I get a 5.4, which is nonsense.
Is ridiculous. And
That's
it's
nonsense.
it's just. I'm rambling. Right. So
put the brakes on for a minute because you're getting into this. No, it's cool. I'm glad. And why it's important to you, and that's some of the things I want to discuss when we get into it, right? Because you do have this kind of weird thing of why are nowadays there's no reason to cast the straight guys to play this movie, and it might come across as it's funny that these dudes are wearing dresses, right, which is not what the film does. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. Luther, talk to me about. Now I don't know what your deal is with this movie. So where did you see it first? How many times you watch it? Full rotation? Tell me about it.
Well, I did end up watching it today for the first time ever.
Okay.
In preparation for the podcast. But I will say that my like experience with Drag Race and just like drag in general is kind of off of Simon showing me like lip sync battles. And I don't know, all sorts of things I watched. But I'm a cheerleader. The last day I was in DC actually before I went to college, and I did feel like there was a lot of parallels with that movie. The idea of like drag, or yeah, I guess drag queens, because RuPaul is in But I'm a Cheerleader, but I guess that movie's not centered around drag, but like just like gay people going to like sort of a small town, and that like sort of like setting and a lot of like the camera shots and use of color are very similar. And I don't know, I just thought that was super interesting, and I really enjoyed just like seeing that play out again. But also not But I'm a Cheerleader is more about like covering up being queer, but this movie takes the exact opposite in like a small, very conservative, traditional town. So I thought that was really unique, and I don't know, I completely knew nothing about this movie until a couple days ago when Simon told me to watch it. So
okay, all right, that was the thing. So you never even heard of it?
No, I have not. No.
Oh my God! All right, so you really did your homework on this. So can you brought it up once, and I'm sorry, I don't get to see a lot of TV. I'm working all the time, and I do try to stay up on things that are new. I'm a Cheerleader. What is this?
Oh, it's such a good movie.
Oh, it's a movie.
Yeah. So it's from the 90s with Natasha Lyonne.
And
it's Natasha Lyonne getting sent to a sort of campy conversion therapy, basically.
Okay.
Of she's lesbian, but she hasn't really realized it, but everyone else around her has. And so her parents and all intervention send her to this conversion therapy, and in conversion therapy she kind of understands her identity, and it's the whole thing like, but I'm a cheerleader, I can't be lesbian, but it's very similar to Tu Wong Fu, and it's like aesthetics of very over the top. Like the conversion therapy is a complete satirization of it, of like RuPaul plays the straight guy who gets the gay boys in order. And it's RuPaul in the 90s, which was at the peak of RuPaulness. That's when, she was in the Brady Bunch as the therapist and all. And so it's kind of comparable, I think, to Tu Wong Fu, but it's a lot more of gay kids coming to terms rather than adults experiencing life, I think.
This is interesting. So you're saying this movie came out in the 90s, this I Am a Cheerleader?
90s or 2000s. I mean, it was before 2010.
All right. So what I'm going to say, and you're mentioning all this stuff, and we just watched Tu Wong Fu, you're talking about I'm a Cheerleader, and I'm thinking about The Birdcage, which I think is great.
One of my favorites, so good.
And I'm thinking about the movie In and Out. Have you seen In and Out?
No.
You should see In and Out. It's Kevin Kline, Tom Selleck, and it's basically a high school, I want to say gym teacher who's engaged to Joan Cusack, but he's gay. And he's so in the closet, he himself doesn't even want to admit that he's gay because of where he's from. Yeah. And it's like everybody around him, like he keeps doing it. I'm sorry, just going to say, quote unquote, like, he doesn't want to admit that he's gay, but he's gay, and everybody that interacts with him, like, is absolutely embracing who he is, but he just hasn't said he's gay yet. So, for instance, he's struggling with the fact that he's about to get married to a woman, but he doesn't want to get married to a woman because he's not attracted to women.
Yeah,
and he goes to have like a bachelor party, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going to do guy stuff," because he's really pushing against the fact that he has to come out of the closet eventually because he's about to get married. Right. And he knows that's selfish to not be honest with his fiance about who he is. And he's just doesn't, but he never says it anyway. The bottom line, he like things in the movie keep coming up like he'll say, so he's like, yeah, we're going to have a bachelor party. And he dresses up in flannel and puts on boots. And then his friends come over, which are all like small town dudes, in flannel and boots. And he goes, all right, we're going to drink beer. Yeah. We're going to go bowling. Yeah. And before that, we're going to watch our guy movies. Yeah. And what do you got for us? And he goes, well, I brought Funny Girl and and they're like, well, but you like Funny Girl. Like you said, Barbara Streisand's amazing in this movie. And he's like, no, I want to see ladies. I want to see pornography. And they're like, yeah, but you said you like Funny Girl. And you convinced all of us that Funny Girl is good. And we all think Funny Girl is good.
Right.
It's just like things like that. And then eventually there's this heartwarming moment you have to see In and Out. Watch
Yeah.
In and Out. Just watch it. It's good. Again, unfortunately, no gay actors in it. Which is unnecessary, but again, we're talking about the 90s.
Well, and you said Birdcage. What I always think about that's so interesting is to me, like now Nathan Lane is gay, like Nathan Lane, you know. But at the time he wasn't out. And that to me is, I mean, because Birdcage to me hits a very specific chord and a very relatable experience played by Nathan Lane about how you express yourself. And I go back and I watch that and it's insane to me that he wasn't out at the time. And then also you see clips, there's some clip of Oprah kind of pushing Nathan Lane on his sexuality and Robin Williams like swooping in and sort of like taking the heat off of him. But just little tangent that,
So it's interesting. So, all right. So let's get to the movie. Got To Wong Foo. All right. Let's keep the waterworks at bay. This is a very touching movie. Everybody should. Oh, I didn't see where I am with this. I knew this movie existed. And I heard Roger Ebert say a lot of good things about it back in the day. And again, this is around the same time as The Birdcage. And I went to a lot of movies in the theaters back in the day. And I wasn't opposed to. I mean, I'm coming out of music school at this point. I'm a theater major. So I'm just like, I'm obviously not opposed to this movie at all. Even though it's a different time in the 90s. I just never got around to seeing it. I just always heard it was good. I knew Swayze did a super job in it, which I never got to witness, and now I have, and it's amazing. And I knew that Wesley Snipes does a super job in it, and past that, I didn't really know what it was about. I just heard it was super good. And then I finally got to see it. So thank you, Simon, for making me actually sit down and watch this movie eventually. Again, just was always on my radar. It just kind of would come back up and then fall away and come back up because other things would happen. So let's talk about To Wong Foo. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Sorry putting on the readers because I'm an old man. And again, kind of rude. Movie has a $30 million budget and it grossed 36. So it did make its money back, but it was kind of a flop.
Yeah.
So To Wong Foo, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Came out in 1995, rated PG-13, coming in an hour and 49 minutes. The best runtime for a movie. All movies should try to be that. Even Dune, Simon. All right. I can't see how your expression right now.
Sorry, is that an Oppenheimer poster behind you?
Yes, it is. It's too long. I understand. It's way too long. All right. 3 drag queens travel cross country until their car breaks down, leaving them stranded in a small town. Directed by Beeben Kidron, written by Douglas Carter Bean, starring in top billing, I'm still not sure why, Wesley Snipes and Patrick Swayze and John Leguizamo and Stockard Channing and Arliss Howard, and there's somebody else here that I recognize, Alice Drummond, who always plays an old woman. I'm not sure, and RuPaul, of course, and of course Julie Newmar.
Yeah.
So hey, let's talk about this movie. All right. So here's the thing. First shots. Patrick Swayze coming out of the bathroom after taking a shower in towel only. It looks like Roadhouse. And if you've seen Roadhouse, or it looks like Dirty Dancing, we're going to see the specimen that is Patrick Swayze in all of his Patrick Swayze-ness.
Yeah.
And then he undergoes the transformation.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely flip the switch. Once the hair goes up, he is not Patrick Swayze anymore.
And they never go back either.
Which I love.
Once, that's wrong. Once, when they have their little argument, and the wig comes off, and they all have to be honest with who they are for a moment. It's that weird honesty moment. Which is very complicated. I love this movie because it is actually very complicated, emotionally speaking. Yeah. I really like that part because it shows it has some emotional intelligence, which I appreciate. Because if it didn't, it would just be a bunch of dudes in dresses.
Right.
And that's not what we're going for here, right?
Yeah.
So we see Swayze, and he is boop, and next thing you know, he is a different person, which says to me that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know the culture, but it seems to me you are being someone else. And the someone else that you are, at least in this movie, you are more comfortable in the high-heeled shoes than you are in your regular shoes. Is that a safe thing to say or no?
So it actually, how I understand it, it varies artist to artist.
Okay, fair enough.
You have some people where their drag persona is a persona. And maybe that persona gives them more power, more confidence, more whatever when they step into it. But they also step out of it. And again, the stereotype is that most drag queens are going to be cisgender men who, born men or born, and were assigned male at birth and continue to identify as such, and then have personas, names, and sometimes change pronouns and all when they're in and out of drag. But then you will also have people, for instance, you will have transgender women and cisgender women who do drag. So some notable examples of those, just to like name drop, you have Sasha Colby, who's incredible, Kylie Sonique Love, they've been on RuPaul's Drag Race. And so they both in and out of drag use she, her pronouns, but a lot of the time stepping into drag for them is, again, a persona. It's putting on something big and different. But it depends on the person.
Back to the movie, though, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Can we assume then that the persona that they're living with is the persona that they want to be?
I mean, if they're not, like when I'm watching Drag Race, of course, like they go and they do the performances, and then when they step out of drag for like, I guess, the drama related moments, or when they're just conversing. And so that's kind of what I was expecting going into this movie after the first sequence of them winning the drag competition. I was expecting for me to be able to see them in and out of drag, but they just stayed in this character and in this like costumes for the rest of the movie. So yeah, I totally interpreted it that way. I feel like they are like, either they're putting on a persona, or this is like who they feel like they are, and that's why they're continuing to present that way. Because I mean, I feel like the funniest part about like that one police scene where they're all in drag, and like they don't want the police to find out that they're a man or something. It was just so funny to me, because they could have just been out of drag the whole time, but they weren't. Right. And so, I don't know. That's just how I interpreted it.
But that's the complicated nature of that. So let's set up that they go on the Chekhov's gun of this movie. The impetus of this movie is nonsense. What I mean by that is not that they won a drag show, and not that they got the best car ever, basically Thelma and Louise, same car, right? Just about. The fact that we have to have the two greatest ones in a tie is ridiculous. We don't need to have that, but how else are you going to get the two together? So that's fine. I'm cool with that. Whatever. I love the fact that they both feel bad for Chi-Chi. By the way, the names of the characters are fantastic.
Yep.
Okay. What is it? Vita Boheme.
Vita Boheme. Yep.
And Noxima.
Oh, Noxima. Oh, wait.
Noxie. They call him Noxie.
I think it's Noxima Jackson. Yeah.
Noxima. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah.
Noxima Jackson.
Oh boy. Okay. And then Chi-Chi, who comes along. We have to have them as archetypes, right? We have, and I do this all the time. Never remember character names. We have Patrick Swayze, who is Vita, is grandma, is mom, and dresses as such.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got Noxie, Wesley Snipes, who's playing, I don't know, what kind of the reality of the situation. Yeah. Right. It's the friend of the person who is from a different side of town and gives kind of the more like, talk some sense into Swayze when she's just being an old woman, and Wesley comes on and says, no, this isn't how it is. But Chi-Chi is the one that needs help. Mm-hmm. And in any movie, the movies are good when they have a character arc. When somebody can develop as a person. You know what the best part is that Noxie and Vita, they know who they are. They don't need an arc. Yeah. They know exactly who they are. They're never going to change. They don't need to explore themselves to suddenly get some freedom of, oh, yes, I am a drag queen. I knew it all along. They don't need that. They're established. They're strong. Mm-hmm. They're strong in more than one ways of one. Talk about Patrick Swayze. Chi-Chi needs the help. Yeah. And they don't come out and say it. That's what I like about the movie. They don't say, we think this movie is going to be about Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes, but it's not. It's about Chi-Chi. It's Chi-Chi's ride. Yeah. Because they got nothing to learn. They figured it out. And to me, that's the complexity of the movie.
Yep. And just on that also, but Vita and Noxima don't feel like stagnant characters at the same time. Like, sure. even though they don't need full arcs, they don't. Throughout the movie, you still feel like they've moved. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I will say there's a switch that happens. There's one scene where they realize that Chi-Chi's the one that saves them when their car breaks down. And there's like, I think the way that Noxima and Vita treat her for the rest of the movie is completely different. They they kind of just like treat her as like this little girl that they're bringing along. But now I feel like it changes and they see her as an equal.
I concur. But also on the other side of it, they give her they give her the 4 rules that you have to learn. It's kind of like the pathway, right?
Right.
The path to enlightenment, right? Which is weird because in Buddhism, I'm just thinking of this now. In Buddhism, there are paths to enlightenment, and they're always itemized in steps. Whether it's the sevenfold way, the fourfold way, whatever. I can't remember exactly. So it's funny that we're on this kind of journey of enlightenment that has steps not unlike Buddhism, except it's being what a drag queen is. Because what does Noxie say to Chi-Chi in the car?
It's the slightly outdated look at different ways of, like, you know, when a straight man puts on a dress for sexual kinks, he's a transvestite, etc. Some outdated looks at gender, and it says, you know, when a man has too much fashion sense for one gender, he's a drag queen. You were just a boy in a dress.
Right. And while it may be dated, and I can absolutely see why that is, because the way that we define this stuff is a little more fluid and a little more open to that. The fact of the matter is, you aren't what we are. Yeah. We've been through the ropes. You have not. You cannot say that you are, because we've been through it. And I want to say that's, to me, the genius, not genius, but the writing of the movie. It doesn't need to tell us that we've gone through the ropes. Now you need to learn. We don't need a flashback to inform us what happened to Swayze and Snipes when they were men deciding that they wanted to do this new culture-ish life to make so that they felt better about them. So to not feel better about themselves. What am I trying to say? Find their identity, right? Find their identity. That's more what I want to say. We don't need that. We don't need that flashback. A stupid movie would give us the flashback. A stupid movie would have something like that happen in New York before they left. But they don't. We don't need it, because they can communicate it to us in other ways without doing that. And the one thing I'll say, when they get pulled over, and to Luther's point, which is a good point, they could have just gone as men. It wouldn't have been a problem. And then wherever they get where they get, they put on the stuff. But they get pulled over by Chris Penn, who is so big. We got to talk about Chris Penn. He's so good in this.
Places where homos would be.
Oh no! Places.
I loved
a list in dark black magic marker, like Donald Trump-esque thick dark black.
He had concepts of a plan.
No, places for homos. But more on that later.
Store.
I know. Antique stores, coffee shops, florists. Oh my God, it's so funny. It's so funny because it's so ignorant, but ignorance is funny if you look at it with a comic lens, right? Ignorance isn't funny, but the fact that you have this character who is a caricature of, anyway, sorry. They get pulled over by Chris Penn, who's going to try to rape, I guess you could say, or have his way with Vida, and Snipes is in there, and all he says, they get pulled over and they look very nervous because they know where they are. They're not in New York anymore. We're in the middle of, the middle of America. And all he has to say, and I don't know the line, all he says is something along the lines of, we've been through this before. This has happened to us before. Right. And the way that he says it, it's like, not like, we've been through this before. It's very light, but the fact of the matter is, they've seen some shit. And they've seen some shit that they don't ever want to experience again. They've encountered these people before, and they don't need to give us a flashback. So that's good for the writing, and that's good for the actors. They can convey all of that without having to give us a flashback. We don't need the flashback. So I appreciate that. All right, so we got to keep going. Wong Fu. So who is Wong Fu, guys?
So I was doing some reading and articles and all beforehand, and the writer talks about how that's based on a real picture he saw in a Chinese restaurant, like that it was based on. And he talks about how he sees Wong Fu was like the bartender or whatever at the restaurant, but he talks about how he sees Wong Fu as God, as like this sort of ineffable being that you're thinking, that is sort of like tying into your and also fitting with this idea of Julie Newmar as the patron saint of their journey.
Yeah, she's so statuesque.
Yeah.
That's and it's such a word. That's such a word.
Yeah.
All right. So Luther, do you agree with that? That is Wong Fu God? And what's the tie to Julie Newmar? The Catwoman, by the way, just from not my generation, but still closer to me. But Luther, how do you feel? Why call this movie To Wong Fu?
I didn't do the reading that Simon
You
did.
don't need to do the
I read
reading. What
one
do you
article.
think?
I read one
What,
article.
yeah, he read
I just looked at
Wikipedia.
it.
Don't make him. He's not. Don't relax you.
I feel like it's such a. It feels so insignificant for a lot of the movie. For it, you're kind of just left wondering. This is why the movie. Why is the movie? Why is this the name of the movie? What does this have to do with anything? And to an extent, it doesn't really like ever is mentioned. It's never really mentioned, but then at the end of the movie, obviously, like there's like the passing of the torch, and I feel like I don't know. I think that I like the idea of having something so insignificant rather than it being explained at the end or anything. It's just used as some sort of way of like, this is us giving back to this town that I feel like was like so special to us, and all these like amazing people that like really embraced us and within like days. And I don't know, I just thought that was so interesting, and they just like never explained it, and I liked that. I liked not really knowing what it meant.
And I love it if it works well, and it shouldn't work. Like you can have movies where stuff like this happens and it's just like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And you go, that didn't do with anything. And the fact of the matter is, because they've crafted the movie in such a smart way, and they have characters that you care about, that they have a link to this Wong Fu character who we don't meet. And you're right, Luther, doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's a symbolic thing. And at the end of the day, it doesn't need to mean anything. And I'm not equating this movie with 2001: A Space Odyssey, but the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, we're in the White Room and suddenly turns into the Star Child, and we see reputation. You can interpret that for days and days and days. And if you ask Roger Ebert, again, I brought him up again, about and I've read his article on 2001: A Space Odyssey, and they say, what is a white room? And he says, it's a white room. Yeah. Like, it's a white room, and whatever you project onto it is your thing. And that's, to me, the picture is Julie Newmar and Wong Fu it's a symbol of something that we don't need to understand, but we follow. And you, as the viewer, can project anything onto it that you want. So has a different meaning for Vita, has a different meaning for Noxie, has a different meaning for Chi-Chi, and eventually a different meaning for, I don't know any of the townspeople's names.
No, yeah, me
Not
neither.
at all. Stockard Channing. Let's just say Stockard Channing, right?
Yeah.
So it's whatever you need it to be at that moment. Holy shit. And nobody has to spell that out in the movie.
Yeah.
It's whatever you need it to be. I'm now giving it to you because I don't need it anymore. But Stockard Channing needs it because she's about to go on her own journey. Like, holy shit. Like, what in this movie? That's, to me, is these multi-layered bits of this movie, which are really, really good, right?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that more people didn't see it. All right, so let's talk about the town. So a couple of things, like I said, when I want to go, you can really go on this movie for a little while. So we get to, I guess, Nebraska. Did they ever say?
I think that's the magic of it. It's just it is just archetypal Middle America.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like I would definitely not stop in that town. I know they broke down, but and it's not because of anything. I'd just be like, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
But so they're in the middle, and so the idea is we're bringing these counterculture people to the places of tradition and whatnot. And so we start to encounter the rednecks and the locals and the people that we think are ignorant. And then we have our little side quests. Yeah. It's great. We actually split up, right? And we have side quests. So we have Snipes goes with the older lady that doesn't talk. We have Chi-Chi falling in love with the impressionable young man. And then we have Vita with the abused wife that goes in there. And to me, while we don't need to have this character study, it's nice to see how they are open to other people. Like they don't want to help, but then after seeing what's going on, they feel as though they might need to help. Because here we have people that are supposed to be so set in their ways that they're not happy in their ways. Yeah. But no one wants to admit that they're not happy in their ways. So then here you have a group of people who other people would call strange, quote unquote, but they're happy. What's your problem?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I mean, that to me, Luther looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think I liked the different plot lines, but then when Chi-Chi gets in trouble and she gets surrounded by the rednecks, the person who kind of was able to get her out of that was obviously the guy who she was falling in love with. I don't remember his name. We don't know
Bobby Lee or something. I remember.
Oh yeah, they're all hyphen names. They're all two names. They're all two names.
Later on, Noxeema is like able to speak to these men with such like confidence and just like this feeling of like, I'm superior to you, and that completely changes them and gets them to be more respectable to the other ladies in the town. And so I think having the different plot lines and seeing how these characters interacted was really interesting. But then when one of them was in trouble, like Chi-Chi, and she needed the other person's support to get into her plot line to like bring her out of it. And like, I don't know, I just like, I think we were able to see Noxeema thrive with the old lady, Vida helping out the person who's being abused, but Chi-Chi was still had this little girl thing because she was in a place of conflict rather than a place of like trying to help out the town.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing with helping out with particularly with the redneck boys that surrounded the surrounded Chi-Chi, and obviously they were going to have. And what's weird is that Chi-Chi is very flirty. Chi-Chi's very flirty because that's either her weapon or her defense mechanism. Is she can use both of them really well, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But these boys came in because that's their learned behavior, right? No one ever said you can't do that. Yeah. And whenever it's happening, nobody ever says anything because that's just, well, boys will be boys. And that is not an excuse to be an asshole. I'm just saying, right? Just because that's what we always did doesn't mean it's right. And it's not right. And there's an expression, and I don't know who said it, but if you get them by the balls, their minds and hearts will follow. And that's exactly what happens to teach these boys a lesson. So anyhow, everyone in the town is so set in their ways and no one's happy. And so what we need is somebody to come in and explain to them what life is really like, right? La vie bohème, if you will, right? In that, that's the whole point, right? Yeah. The name is there. Yeah. So why are you so set in your ways if nobody's happy? And so we had these influences come in to say, hey, there's no reason for any of this. You can change all of this. You have this strawberry festival and nobody has fun. Why don't we make it fun? Probably because we always do it this way. Well, tradition is dead people telling you what to do. So do the way that I'm fully amenable to that idea. So we are slowly trying to get the townspeople, and they're very, the three characters are very, how can you not like them? Basically, like how you not like them. So bottom line is the festival is starting to come together. They're trying to get people in there. People are trying to finally like figure out who they are. And there's a point here that I just absolutely just lost. Hold, please. Fill the space.
Well, on that, I think something that it reminds me a lot of is the end of Rocky Horror Picture Show. Just in a very different way, because it's sort of this idea of like, no matter who you are, dragging up your life makes it better. Taking the idea of drag, of this persona, of making yourself, and a lot of drag queens talk about how they portray themselves actually plays into like insecurities they have. So there's this one queen who will always paint on a unibrow and make that part of her persona because one of her insecurities is that she has a unibrow. And I think that idea is what translates into the idea of drag yourself up, of let yourself be opulent, let yourself be over the top, and let that not just be a shell, but also let that help you figure out how you are strong. And I think, and Rocky Horror Picture Show does that in a much weirder, campier, inscrutable way with the number at the end. But I think that's sort of, and again, that's not said outright.
No,
everyone is obviously in their version of drag. Even the redneck guys are in their version of being dragged. They look good, and they look clean. They look clean, and they're wearing bright colors, and they're in their version of what is over the top for them. What is exaggerating their personas? And it's not said.
I love this.
You can see it. And when everyone's like, "That's my heel. I'm a drag queen. I'm a drag queen." Someone said, "I guess I'm a drag king," and that's also another. There are performers who are drag kings who go super mask. And it's that is really what stood out to me. They don't say it. They don't say, "Oh my God, drag saved my life, and being able to be so over the top is so great." It's like it's not that. It's this idea of you see people being able to feel strong and powerful and happy when they take the ideas of drag and apply them to their own life.
And
well, I think go ahead, Luther, go.
I think what it reminded me of is this idea of not having to say it, to not having to like say, oh my God, there's drag queens in our town. Oh my God, what is this? What's going on? Reminded me, not in the over top way, but it reminded me of Schitt's Creek a lot, because that is a small town show where being gay just was like, at some point in the show just became like it became normalized. It was completely fine. You're still a member of our community, our small town, and that's like not something that you usually see in American media. You usually see these small towns as like redneck towns, like very exclusionary, very traditional. But near the end of this movie, it felt a lot like Schitt's Creek, the way that the entire community was embracing these people and embracing like difference in expression. I don't know. I just thought I absolutely love Schitt's Creek, and by the end of this movie, I felt like I was watching that. And
all this cursing,
really
Luther, I don't know that I can handle this. I just want to say, I just want to, yeah, I know. I just want to say something from the director of this. Hold on a second. The development, it said the writer wanted to do this as a stage play. He was inspired by an anti-gay propaganda film called The Gay Agenda. And he said there's a scene where they show drag queens coming through the town, the narrator warning the viewers that these people will take over our town. And I thought, well, that would be fun. Because it would be fun. Damn it.
It would be.
Like, it'd be fun as hell.
Yeah.
So I like what you said, Simon. I think you encapsulated what I was really going for, and I appreciate it. The fact is to find your strength, right? Is that it doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to. For the movie, the purposes of the movie, and dovetailing what Luther said, you don't have to go into full drag. You just find your strength, whatever that is. And it doesn't have to be that person's strength. And it doesn't have to be that person's strength. The strength is finding out who you are. And that's what we see with the abused wife, who is just absolutely just always in the kitchen and getting slapped around and whatnot, is that she finds her strength. And once she does, because eventually the husband leaves, get to that later, or I don't know that we'll get to that. It doesn't matter. And when he comes back, because he's abusive, and once he comes back, she barely has to say anything to him to say that you're not coming back anymore.
Yeah.
And he recognizes it, that he's basically, I always say he's a weak predator. He only goes after the sick. He doesn't go after anybody strong. And once she says she's strong and wearing a red dress, by the way, almost like a red wedding dress.
Well, I was gonna say also gives kind of Scarlet Letter too. Like,
perfect. Absolutely. Right. He just doesn't even bat an eye. He's like, well, I lost, and leaves. Two other things I know we're kind of going up against about an hour here. So there's two other main points I want to bring up. I want to see how you feel about it. That's a lot of what the show is, right? I have ideas. I throw them against the wall and see what sticks, right? One thing we got to talk about is this movie is complicated in terms about emotional honesty. And we have Chi-Chi, who has been characterized as, you're just a boy wearing a dress. That's a quote. That's not my quote. By Wesley Snipes. Okay. So he doesn't, quote unquote, understand, according to Wesley Snipes, doesn't understand what it is to be a drag queen. You just think that you're a boy in a dress. And that's his journey. There is the scene where the young man is in love with Chi-Chi, thinks he's a woman, right? Doesn't know his truth. And they have that scene in the porch that is the most seductive, romantic scene. Like, it really plays out like, I can't think of the movie, but like classic romance of a boy and a girl, and they love each other. And you can actually sense the chemistry between the two. And that is so complicated because it's a lie. It's a lie. And you feel good for Chi-Chi, but you don't feel good for Chi-Chi at the same time. Am I going way out of bounds on that? Or
so I'll actually kind of interject there. I've heard when the movie came out, there were a lot of trans women who sort of latched on to Chi-Chi's character. And in kind of people's retrospect of the movie, some people have in like a modern remake of the movie, Chi-Chi could be played as a trans woman because her sort of experience is different than Vida and Noxie. She is arguably deeper into living as a woman to some degree than the others are. And I think that kind of adds to the complicatedness of gender that it plays into. You know, at no point does Chi-Chi talk about seeing herself as anything other than Chi-Chi.
That's true.
Which is really interesting. And I think also when Vida is like kind of, I think it is a reality that a lot of trans people are confronted with of having to grapple with, you meet someone and how are they going to respond? And obviously the movie was doing more just on the kind of drag queen, not trans woman. Like that's not the story they were explicitly telling. But I think in a lot of how people have received it is it sort of, it shows this very specific experience of difficulty, of give and take that people have to deal with. Yeah.
So can we say that can we then at least say that it is a does it do the moment? So I'm asking generally, does it do that moment the respect it deserves?
I liked the moment. I thought the moment was very
I think
sweet.
so too.
And it also part of it is,
well, wait a minute, Simon, let me break in for 1 second. It's sweet, but it's complicated.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Oh yeah, and on that also all of it's fantasy too. Like there's
absolutely, because it's got soft lighting, it's got swooping things, it's got music in the back, so it is absolutely a fantasy moment for both of them. Really,
and there's no world where Chi-Chi stays in the town. Like when you think realistically, Chi-Chi's place is in a city. Chi-Chi, and sure, she's caught up in this idea of what if I stayed with him, but that's the thing that stuck out even more to me than the complexity of the like gender dynamics of it, but of just like, this can't last for the base reason of this is a moment. This is a moment that you're having and it's going to end. This is not the beginning of something new. This is a moment in your journey.
Okay.
And you kind of see that at the end when she wins the pageant. Like that was a moment on her journey. And so kind of in retrospect, you see how that shaped her.
Well, that's her journey, and she needed to have that moment in order to understand her role.
Yeah.
Or not her role. I don't want to say it like that. Where she is in her life at that moment, not role. And we see that she needs to have that moment to really be truthful, or at least to really find her strength, so that at the end she can be statuesque, because she is in that last moment, right? She is Julie Newmar.
Dress. I love not to go full gay, but I love the dress. In the end, I think it is gorgeous, and all the it matches the crown and the scepter. It's fierce. I love it.
It's fierce.
I had to interject. I mean, okay, it's a movie about drag queens. I'm allowed to say something is fierce, Marty.
Okay, that's cool. That's fine. Luther, were you looking to interject anything there? I wasn't paying attention. I was looking at what Simon was saying.
That's okay. I just have one thing. I was just like, while Simon was saying this, I was thinking about it. I feel like Chi-Chi is the one throughout the movie, before they even get to the town, who is like, I need to go. Like, I want to even go back to New York City. Like, I need to get out of here. I need to do, I want to be this. I want to be that. And so that's why in that moment, it doesn't, in my mind, it didn't feel that romantic. It felt like there was something, it was a romantic moment between both of these people who like each other a lot, but it also felt like something that was behind it, that was like, this is not what is happening here. So there's like character development on Chi-Chi's side, and she's gonna have to break away for anything to, like, for her dreams to be wanted. And that's exactly what happened. Right after that moment, like the peak of their like romance, it just completely, it kind of just is just like, she kind of just like shrugs it off. The next scene, she's like, oh yeah, like, I'm ending things, like we're going to LA, like that's it. I don't know. I just thought that was like something narratively that I don't usually see in a movie.
Yeah.
But
I would like to just take a moment to say that that's why the movie's good, is that we both saw the same scene and all of us have a different realistic take on the scene.
Yeah.
And so the movie allows you the space to feel about it the way you want to feel about it, but still keeping the central idea.
Yeah.
Again, feel about it the way you feel about it, but not dudes in dresses, right? It's, you know what I mean? So it's doing the justice. It's giving it the respect it deserves. So, all right, we got to talk Chris Penn.
Oh my gosh.
Simon, talk to me.
No, just on the dudes in dresses. In my article singular that I read, but in the beginning, a lot of the drag queens that they have in that first crawl, in addition to RuPaul, are people who are actual drag queens. The woman, the ginger woman or queen who had the kind of, who was throwing faces at Noxima. That's Coco Peru. And then there was Lady Bunny in the audience. And basically all of them talked about how Wesley Snipes, John Leguizamo, and Patrick Swayze were respectful. They were not there to be dudes in dresses. They were there to be respectful and true representations of drag queens. And all of them had coaches, basically. I wrote down the names of, I got Candace Cain was Patrick Swayze's, and Larissa Dumont was John Leguizamo's. I couldn't find who Wesley Snipes was. And just Leguizamo said this quote of, drag didn't really exist in movies. There were straight men who pretended to be women to get out of trouble or into trouble, but this was not that. I was trying to make, and he says, I was trying to make Chi-Chi a real life trans character. And Patty and Wesley were trying to be real drag queens. They were trying to give honest representations that I feel like, other than Birdcage, and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, you don't, at that time you didn't see. It was Mrs. Doubtfire, which is haha, man in a wig, and he's hijinking, you know.
Well, it goes back to Some Like It Hot as well,
right?
Back in the day, it's just, isn't that funny? Gotta tell you, every time I saw Swayze walk, I'm like, that is staggeringly good.
Yeah,
like his female form is staggeringly good. It's crazy. My wife said it every single time. I said it every other time. I'm like, that is bananas. How he's nailed that. Because he's a dancer anyway, so I mean, but he had his hand the right way. He's very elegant. It was super good.
And you juxtapose that with, you know, Dirty Dancing, which is, he's a dancer, but he's also like big man. And it's totally different. The funniest thing I saw is they had a ton of famous actors try out, and one of them was, who's the guy from Grosse Point Blank? He has the sister, John Cusack, and they said all these actors came in drag, and John Cusack looked like Joan Cusack in drag. That's my favorite, just anecdote I saw.
they do kind of look alike. All right, so look, Chris Penn plays our MAGA our MAGA dude of the thing, and he is the conservative voice of the entire movie. You know, he's the one that comes on to Patrick Swayze, tries to rape him, realizes he's a man, and you know, he gets knocked out. They think he's dead, but he's not. Doesn't matter. Comes back. He's looking for with like Cinderella. With the shoe.
I didn't even think about that. With the see-through slipper.
See-through slipper. Does it fit you? Like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he is literally, just like the person said in the play about the anti-gay propaganda, literally on the roof of a house with a bullhorn saying these people are going to ruin us. And at that point, they've all kind of come around and realized, like, no, they're not. Like, but I just have to say that when he's in the bar,
they love that scene.
It's the funniest thing. He's in the bar after he's gone through the town with the places for homos list that he struck out on, where he's trying to find these people. He's having the conversation, and he talks about.
Conversation is generous. That was a monologue.
I know it was a monologue. You're right. It was a speech about, you know, I forget even how it started, but just talking about, it's very homoerotic, kind of, you know, tussling his fingers through the man's chest hair and whatever. So basically saying the latent homosexuality of that's inside of him.
Yeah.
And so, but he's not, maybe that's what he's fighting against. He's so anti that he actually is that. And it goes to show, like, is the movie saying all the guys in that movie hung out together? Like, they weren't ever like, they either wanted to sexually abuse women, they didn't want to be in relationships. They wanted to hang out with other dudes. And when you went in the bar, it was just dudes. Yeah. And so the bottom line is like, are we saying that about you could make that argument, like, you want to hang out with guys so much because maybe, and you don't want to admit it. You don't want to allow a woman into your life because maybe you're not into that.
Yeah.
And I just love that scene so much because it just says something about that. I'm like, well, why you like being with guys so much? Like, why do you hate women? Like, you hate women, you slap them around. So why don't you just say it? I just like that a lot. I don't know. Any takes on that? I just love that it allowed us to say what we're all thinking. Like, you hate women, so just say it. You don't like women. Like, you really don't like women.
Yeah.
I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
What I just love about that character is how terribly / well it aged of like this idea of all of these conservative pundits and politicians who are making an issue out of nothing, of like people don't actually, and like you can see in elections, the conservatives who stake their entire like policy on trans people, normal people don't give a fuck about trans people. Normal people don't give a fuck about drag queens. I mean, you scapegoat them enough, sure, but like the loudest people are sometimes the guiltiest in his case of it's just like internal stuff, but are also like the wrongest. He thinks he's speaking to his demographic of people, but they don't care.
Yeah, they're not listening. And
it's also this thing of like a lot of people are transphobic, homophobic, whatever, until they actually meet a gay person, until they actually meet a trans person. And like it's humanized. You see them as normal people because we are, you know?
They're just people.
And I think that is what I love so much about the movie. Of it satirizes him so much, but all the stuff he's saying is the stuff we still see on Twitter. You know?
Good for you. All right. Think that. Good for you. All right. Yep. Luther?
No, I do. I feel like that was like the most modern. Like you see the stuff that he's saying. You could pull it up like on a different podcast. Like it's not hard to find this stuff anywhere.
Yeah.
But yet it is like genuinely the smallest group of people with the loudest voices. There's not people out there who genuinely are that like anti-feminist, anti-gay. I mean, they could be, but as of course, as Simon said, you just have to sit down and you have to talk to these people. And like, this is getting a little bit off topic from the movie, but I'm taking a class on political polarization, and one of the readings that we had was talking about how people become homophobic. And it was basically saying like, it was talking about an election that's happening in Australia on same-sex marriage, and it says, well, there probably will, like, people will vote in favor of same-sex marriage, but we think that there will be still a vocal opposition, and the reason why is because these people just don't talk to other people that like. They never have like a normal conversation with someone who's gay or someone who's accepting. Yep. Usually these people are like told over and over again like what they value is wrong, but that's not really a way to convince someone that to come to your side, to like be accepting of gay people. If you just go up to someone and say, oh my god, you're a terrible person, like if I said that to someone about their political beliefs or like their religious beliefs, they're never gonna be like, oh yeah, you're right, okay, like, all right, cool. Oh,
how could I get so wrong? Thank you for telling me.
Like, no, you're gonna become really defensive. But the only way to change these people's minds is if they like genuinely like interact, or if there's someone in their life that comes out as gay. And of course there's like terrible stories about like that happening and these people still shutting these people out of their lives, but I don't know, I just think that like that way of thinking in America and this character that was portrayed in the 90s is still really relevant today, and I don't know.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of look, we all don't have to agree, we don't have to be friends, but we got to be friendly. We don't have to, you don't have to want to hang out, but you got to respect who each other is. That's all. Like, that's it. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to, the bottom line is chances are people that are really steadfast in their ways, you're not going to change their mind on either side. It's the people in the middle that want to have the conversation. And it also advocates, and this doesn't work in DC. But in my old school, nothing against my old school, but people in my old school in that town in Rhode Island, they just never leave. In fact, studies have been done in Cranston and Johnston, Rhode Island. They're not bad places. Not saying that. The gene pool in that is the most like unmixed gene pool ever. Like they all are born there, they stay there, they breathe there, and they die there, and that's fine. Like if that's what makes you happy, great.
Right.
That's not an issue in DC. Nobody from DC is from DC, basically. Right? They're all from somewhere else.
I was born in Sibley Hospital.
Okay, I'm just saying, like most of us aren't from here, and to me, I always advocate you got to get out. So you guys that went to Connecticut and went to Michigan, because even though DC is obviously very varied and has a lot of different things going on, you got to go out and see other things, because otherwise, how will you know something different? And that's the thing. Like the people that never leave, that's a problem, because you haven't seen the things that you don't like to make a decision that you don't like them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you gotta go experience it and go, not for me. Fine. At least you tried it. At least you saw it. And like, okay, that's not really my thing.
And you see the reverse of that in Tu Wong Fu of it came to the small town, and
yes,
it opened there, and there was never even distinct prejudice, but
no,
by the end of it, what you assume their reaction would have been has been flipped, because they met people. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about getting to know real people, not about what you are told a drag queen is like, but getting to meet a drag queen. And that could be the stand-in for any tens of prejudices.
Yep. I'm gonna say one more thing. We're gonna get the final judgment here in a moment. I just like the fact that this movie, even though, and again, I don't know how to phrase it, so pardon me. We have three people that are sort of in quote unquote hiding, or they think they're in hiding. They think that their truth, that they're not women, is going to come out. And in another movie, that would be like a crisis moment.
Yeah.
And in this movie, because I didn't see it, I didn't know what it was about really, except for the three characters. You're waiting for that moment to come out, and then it's going to ruin everything, and then they have to like plead their case and blah blah blah. And it never comes. And in fact, it diffuses it when she just says, "I saw you had an Adam's apple. I know you're not a woman."
Yeah.
And that's it. She knew from the beginning. She's not stupid. She's like, "I know you're not it's fine. Shouldn't care." And from that moment, you can assume then that everybody else thought the same thing. And the people that didn't care were never going to care. And the people that did care cared.
Yeah.
And they're out of the town now, so it doesn't matter. And I love that, because you're waiting for the moment. Every other movie would have that moment.
Yeah.
And they took it away from you and said, "You have an Adam's apple."
Yeah.
Like,
I
just loved it. I'm like, good for you, movie. Good for doing something different. Go ahead.
Me and Simon have talked about this before, even watching this movie. I think there's a problem with a lot of movies that like say they're like a queer movie, where like they make the entire plot line or this entire like big scene about just like coming out and it being like a whoa, like big shock factor that this person is gay. And in this movie, it's a little bit different. It's more about them being drag queens, but it's also like, I think like real like queer media, Schitt's Creek and To Wong Fu, it's kind of just like, this is who they are, and there's no big moment like what you're saying. It's just she has an Adam's apple and that's it, and this entire town comes together. Even after they find out that they are drag queens, they come out together and they're not like, "Oh my god, you guys were drag queens? Oh well, I will still support you." They just support them.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's so cool.
We'll support you anyway.
Yeah.
Like, that sentence doesn't come up because it's not necessary, right?
And it also, I think, adds to a positive depiction of drag. Drag isn't hiding, you know? Like, there isn't a reveal because there's nothing to reveal. They are just, I mean, yes, maybe it's characters or performance, but it's still who they are. Even if they're using a campy name and look all vampy or whatever, it's still them. There's nothing to reveal. And I think, I'm putting my finger on it for the first time now saying that, but I think that's also what it does well. It's that reveal moment doesn't come because that reveal moment isn't realistic. Like, yes, maybe if you're a drag queen, there's that coming out moment of telling mom and dad I'm a drag queen, but like in where they are in their life and in that kind of community that they're interacting with, it's nice that their identities are accepted and how they're putting them forward. And it's this recognition of it still is drag. It still is a persona. I think it walks that line very well.
Can we say that maybe the three characters then, they got nothing to prove because they proved it?
Yeah. Well, and
they got nothing to prove.
It's also content, like they proved that they are good people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also,
but we don't need to have a moment that says, "Oh, and I'm a good person."
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. There's no "and." Like, "Oh, I'm a drag queen and I'm a good person," by the way. Oh, we never thought.
Yeah.
Like, they don't do that because we don't have to, because we live with the characters for the whole movie. So we don't have to have that moment, which again assumes I'm not stupid as a viewer. Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Well, and also, just on what Luther was saying, it is very refreshing to not see, as I think people on the internet have coined it, queer misery in movies. There's such a there's a trope called bury the gays, which is you always kill off at least one gay person in a couple so they don't have a happy ending in a TV show. Like, if you look for it, it happens so frequently. You don't get to see gay people just being gay and happy. It is such a thing of the conflict of their identity is laughed off. You know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
isn't a weighty melodramatic moment because that's so exhausting. Like, yeah, sometimes it's great to tell those stories, but like, sometimes you want to watch an escapist movie, and it's nice.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Luther, any final words on that?
I think Simon got it like exactly what I wanted to say.
Stop it.
I think looking back on, because I'm now looking more at these like 90s films with drag queens and just queer people in general, I feel like sometimes they do it better than modern examples of like queer films, because sometimes it feels like these films are trying too much, trying to make it seem like something is relatable, but instead they kind of just make the entire premise that this person is gay and they need to come out and they need to go into a relationship and have a heartbreaking story, and like I don't know, like that's what I don't know. It's not really necessary. Why don't you just create media where they just like kind of just like exist and they're just like who they are? And I don't know, this movie really it did it brilliantly for me, and I feel like it could have, besides the dated jokes, it could have been made yesterday.
Sure. Can we then say, like, you were mentioning something about that, and I'm wondering about Knock at the Cabin. You ever seen Knock at the Cabin? It's the M. Night Shyamalan movie. All right, never mind. It's typical M. Night Shyamalan. It's weird.
Yeah.
And never mind. I'm not going to bring it up because it's too much to explain. But basically, there's a gay couple in it, a man couple, and they adopt a girl. And the whole deal is 5 strangers come to the cabin, and they're saying the world's going to end, and they're prophets of doom who don't want to be prophets of doom, but they've been made to be prophets of doom, and that one of the partners has to murder the other one to save the world.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, I know, right? But the fact that they're not a man, it could have been a man-woman couple, and it's not.
Right.
So there's no what Luther's getting at. There's no need for a melodramatic moment like, it's worse because they're 2 guys. Like, it's just, no, they are in a relationship and one doesn't want to murder the other one.
It's time now for Final Judgment. Are you ready to rubber stamp this bitch? Here's the Final Judgment.
All right, well, it's time. We've come to the end of our show. It's time to do Final Judgment. This is the time we decide whether or not this movie holds up to the test of time. So it's no longer opinion. They're now talking about facts. And we're going to put the stamp on this. Again, it came out in 1995, and I'm going to go to Luther first. Luther, do you think this movie stands up to the test of time? I think we've already kind of mentioned it, but we might as well say it.
I think it does. I think that the portrayal of characters, I think that there's a couple things that you could definitely say are dated. Like, for example, and I don't think that these are things you ever, like, in a month's time would even think about. There's these racist jokes, Latino jokes that really just, like, don't need to be there. And, like, don't make the movie any stronger. And so that's the only thing where I feel like, oh, that is, like, completely dated and just unnecessary. But like the general theme and like the messaging behind the movie and the way that it was portrayed so well, even by 3 straight guys, I don't know. I just think that this is brilliant, and I think that a lot of people would still say that it holds up.
Yeah.
Great. Simon.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Luther. I think it tells a story that is still relatable and important, and that still, I think, resonates with people and lived experiences. Again, I think if it was made today, again, the script would probably be a little bit different in its jokes, and we'd have 3 actual drag queens playing the parts. But even still, it's respectful. It has heart. It's funny. It's good, and it not only does it stand the test of time, but it's still relevant today. And what we were talking about with Sheriff Dullard, it's like that dynamic is even more I would say even more prevalent now than it was, or is on a different scale. And so I think it is one that not only stands up, but is an important message, especially as people get more polarized and get further from touch of actual people-to-people relationships. So yeah.
Agreed. All right. So we have 2 for yes. I'm going to again say, yeah, it does hold up. Just from a storytelling standpoint, it's very, very good. I was never bored at any point. I was absolutely related. I was in with the character's journey, and I love the fact that it didn't think I was stupid. That it didn't have to spell everything out for me. That I was able to kind of understand what was going on. in terms of how everybody felt at any time, whether or not I agreed what was going on. I don't mean in terms of that. Just bottom line, it's super good. Everybody should see it. It's just fantastic. And I'm not going to harp on this for the same reason you guys said. I think it needs to be watched. Honestly, I think it would be a really good idea for most people at least to see it once. Anyhow, so yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that was our show, everybody. Thanks for kind of tuning in. Again, I want to thank my guests, Simon Holland and Luther Hoy. Tell us where we can find you. No,
Middletown, Connecticut.
Yeah, right. It's shaped like a pie. I want to wish you guys the best of luck. I want to say, wherever you are and wherever you're doing, experience what you can. Stay safe, of course. Just know that we're all thinking about you, and we're all rooting for you to be as successful as possible. I'm being serious about that. So I wish you nothing but the best, and particularly that I was part of your journey at one point. So I do appreciate that. Yeah. And I want to thank you for being on the show and for giving me this perspective. Again, I said I was talking to the guys off screen before, like I'm an old white guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm not in this. And some of the things that I felt, Simon and Luther were able to put into more concise terms. So I want to thank you that we could have this conversation. So that now when I want to have this conversation, I'm a little better armed to say it, not necessarily the right way, but the one that makes more sense for today. Again, we as people need to listen to everybody, young and old, so we can all learn from each other. So I appreciate that time. I really do. And to everybody else, thanks for listening to Film Crickets. If you like this, please spread the word, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Spread the word around. I want to thank Steve Lavoie for our vocal imaging and Draco and the Malfoys for the theme song. And again, movies may not age like fine wine, but we kind of drink it anyway. Thanks and bye.